Hey everybody, HBCU Game Day is here for a super huge conversation because we have lots of news going on. FAMU left, that's new, but it's kind of old news now. Bethune-Cookman left the MEAC last week, or at least announced that decision. The MEAC responded a couple of days later with a press conference of their own. So now let's talk about where the MEAC is, their response, and what the future might hold. We got a super crew on tap today. Wally Pitt, Stephen J. Gaither, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill from Houston, Texas, and down in Tallahassee, we have Vaughn Wilson. Wally, we're going to start with you first, man. We haven't heard from you in the last week or so. What did you think? Bethune-Cookman rolling out, the MEAC responded.
Well, I'll say you haven't heard from me because I have the least educated voice among all of you guys who had this story covered, from Vaughn to we got the doctor and then the journalist. So there was no films for me to make, so I fell back. But I was watching. And the one thing I noticed in the MEAC presser was there was a lot of talk about history. The one thing that stuck out was when Commissioner Thomas said, well, all of these schools got their names from the MEAC. It felt like this really proud kind of like, you know, you would be nothing without us, which I was kind of like, ooh, it made me feel like there still aren't a whole lot of forward thinking, because from us, we want to know what's going to happen. Like, we know the MEAC is a great conference, but we want to know, where do you line up? Because that Bethune-Cookman news was in the rumor mill a long time ago, and there's some other stuff that's in the rumor mill. And one thing we've seen from this whole process, even from A&T leaving, and then I bet Steve could speak to the rumor mill from even Hampton, they've all been true. A lot of the rumors that have come down the pipeline have been true. So I'm one of these people who, I think we're dealing with two separate things. In a perfect world, I want and feel like the MEAC needs to be a conference, a power conference, just because of all the history. But we live in a practical world, and right now I can't blame schools for saying this don't look good and pressing the exit button to get out of there, even if it is to a conference that's not an HBCU conference. And while I know I feel away, other people feel away, I can't be too mad for a school seeing what's happening and saying, you know what, we might need to take our talents elsewhere. But from a fan perspective, again, I say this every time, I cannot wait for this new swag. I can't wait. Like, it's going to be so fun. Y'all going to catch me in Mississippi. I'm going to get that red roast sausage I've been talking about for so long. I mean, I cannot wait to start shooting some of these games and kind of like inundating myself into the culture. So when y'all see me, give me your plate. I'll put you on TV.
All right, I'll tell you what. If you're on this call right now and you have a PhD, raise your hand. Okay, we're going to go to that guy right there because he is the brains of the operation. Dr. Cavill, you kind of had an interesting theory on maybe a way that the MEAC could climb out of this hole that they're in. I don't know if it's a shot in the dark, if you feel like it's really good, but your advice to Dr. Thomas, if you were in charge, would be what?
Yeah, I come at this from my doctoral perspective as in a consultant in terms of running the numbers. And much like Wally suggested, I heard a lot of history, and obviously history is important, right? But what I was looking for is innovation. How do you move forward? Strategy, tactics, in terms of what are you looking at moving forward? And they leaned on that a little bit by saying that they were hiring this consulting group. But I would have liked to heard a little more about what does that look like, right? I think I saw Steven jumping here and saying, can I get a little more? Can I get a little more? Vaughn was like, hey,
yeah, I mean, you hire consultants, but it's your conference. I mean, you got to give us something.
Exactly. So the idea I put out there quickly would be like, I think that you need to go at this from not a singular approach, but a multi-tier approach. So one of those things would be approaching a multitude of teams. And let me finish this because I know some of you all are from these institutions. You know them more detailed than I do, and you're concerned about the financial component, rightfully so. Because we heard that if you're a Division II, you got to take $1.6 million to move up just in terms of the cost. But the question that comes is, how long do you have to pay that? Is it over the 4-year period that it takes you to transition? That reduces a little bit about your cost. But what if you put something out there in such a way that you had a group of institutions, HBCUs for this particular, that matched up with rivalries that could exist or could be reestablished. So starting with North Carolina, looking at Winston-Salem State, matching up with a rival with North Carolina Central, going up to Virginia, looking at Virginia State, matching up with the rival with Norfolk State, looking at Bowie State with the rival with Morgan State. Well, yes, that sounds good, but still the cost is a factor. What if you put out there in such a way that you took some of that cost away because you found a way to help alleviate that cost? And I say that in such a way that I don't want to give too much information in case these people call, that I still am open for business. But that's the point that I'm getting on the table in such a way that you really need to be careful of how you look at this. And if you're doing this just the traditional way, then I think you may find yourself in some more issues than you have than if you just continue to do what you've always done, thinking that you're going to get different results. And we know how they define that.
Steve, we've heard this door slamming over and over again. CIAA schools are not interested in moving up to the MEAC. If it became on sale, so to speak, or something more feasible than $1.6 million to get into the game, do you see any way that a CIAA or any Division II school might help fill the void that the MEAC is going to need to fill sooner than later?
I think it's very hard to see. I mean, even before COVID-19 became a thing, that was already going to be very hard. I mean, if you look at the budgets of most of these schools, some of the ones I was able to access, like a Virginia State, some Bowie State, I mean, their budgets are kind of in that $4 million range, maybe. That was kind of at the ceiling there. You look at in the MEAC, South Carolina State, as far as a football playing institution, they have the lowest budget at under $8 million. So even if they doubled their current budget, they'd be at the bottom of the MEAC. Is it worth it? You also look at, and Dr. Gaville was right to talk about the rivalries. But let's look at that a little bit. When Central came up to Division I, they get a chance to play A&T every week, every year, and that's great. That's one game a year. They know they're going to pack the house. But if you look at their attendance outside of that one game, it's severely lacking. And even Winston-Salem State, where you don't play at A&T, you don't play a North Carolina Central, their attendance was still 800 people higher. It's the proximity. I think that the weakness of the MEAC has always been the lack of proximity, especially the further south that you go. And I think that the money is important, but I think again in a post-COVID world where everybody's trying to cut costs, to go up to a conference where, you still don't know what Delaware State's going to do. They're still on the ropes right now. I mean, they got another day or so before they announce, before the door is shut for them for the next year. But you got South Carolina State too, where, they've had budget issues. They had enrollment issues, and enrollment's going to be a thing for everything. So you can't count the money out. The rivalries are great. I will say I do think that I did not care for that remark about the schools gaining their prominence in the MEAC. FAMU, they won their championship without being in the MEAC and things like that. So history is important, but at the same time, the MEAC from its foundation has benefited from the fact that, if everybody just wanted to be all HBCUs together, all of the HBCUs on the East Coast would have just stayed in the CIAA in the 70s. But they benefited from the different schools wanting to do what's best for them. And that's been their benefit for the past 40 years, and now it's starting to become a thing where it's not as much of a benefit as it was, and you have A&T and Hampton leaving for the Big South, and I'm sorry to disappoint some people. I just don't see either one of them coming back from where they already are.
Well, the MEAC's loss has been the SWAC's gain. Vaughn Wilson, you're down there in Florida, which overnight became SWAC territory. How big is that the SWAC now owns, for the most part, the HBCU scene in Florida, or at least in the year to come, they will?
Well, I don't want to be disrespectful, first off, but Dr. Thomas is a great guy. But that statement that both Wally and Stephen said is an insult to Florida A&M University because there is one statue on the campus of Florida A&M University. One. Not a president. It is Jake Gaither, who played in the SIAC and won 23 of 25 conference championships. So football for Florida A&M was well underway before the MEAC. So an encompassing statement like that, the Rattler Nation did not take it well. I have to say that, the response. But as far as for the SWAC, over the years, Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman have played several SWAC teams. I started looking at the records just in football, and it's incredible how many contests they've had against SWAC schools. This has been rumored for years and years, at least in the Florida A&M circles. In a shorter period of time, that HBCU Super Conference has been rumored over the last decade plus. It just seems like they both came together to form overnight. It just happened really, really fast. And let me tell you, the excitement at Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman, as we spoke to Lynn Thompson the other day, the VP and Director of Athletics at Bethune-Cookman, he basically said something that, a lot of people wouldn't admit, and I give him a lot of credit for admitting it, because I asked him, I said, wasn't it a factor that the Bethune fan base wanted to continue regular play against Florida A&M? He said, absolutely. So the history of Florida A&M and Bethune, synonymous with one another, going to the SWAC, bringing the academic part, bringing the bands, bringing the athletics, bringing the traditions. It's a great fit for the SWAC, and I've got to give credit to Dr. McClellan for excellent presentations, excellent execution of the transitions, made it seamless for the schools, at least on the front end, and built up confidence in both of the schools that the SWAC is the way to go, and they are building a great brand there.
You talk about presentation, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I think any move that the MEAC makes from this point forward, everything is important. The words that they use, the optics of the situation, they have to exude confidence and strength moving forward. They don't have any room at all to show any signs of weakness where they are. When you look back at Friday's press conference, I think you got to look at everything. I think it was kind of ironic and symbolic that you had Dr. Thomas in a conference room full of empty chairs, and he was at the front of the table and not the head of the table. A lot of people might not look at that and think of anything, but I think their energy is going to have to stay up and even improve. I thought they kind of sounded, and who could blame them, a little like a weathered fighter when we heard from them on Friday.
Yeah, despondent. Despondent would be the word I would use. It was very much like, now we gotta talk about it. Because when Hampton left, it was like, nah, it's all good, nothing to see here. Savannah State leaves, they're like, you know what I mean? A&T leaves, and they're like, okay, well, we just ain't gonna say nothing. And, FAMU leaves, and it's like, they at the door, banging on the door, and then Bethune, and now it's like, okay, we gotta say something. That was the vibe I got from it. It was very much like, okay, now we gotta talk about it. And they just got to do something. And I don't know if there's anything to be done. And one question I've been posing is how many schools are falling back, saying, hey, we might be able to save ourselves a $500K exit fee by just letting the thing kind of fizzle out. I mean, again, you guys are more educated in terms of how a conference would fold. And again, I want to reiterate, I'd love to meet that. But I mean, right now, like I said, I got the most uneducated view of this. I don't see how it's there. If they come back from this one, I got all the respect in the world from them because I just don't see it.
Now, while you're talking about it, educating, you using SAT words to open up.
Now, I mean educated on this subject. This subject in general. I have not been as I'm not as well read as you brothers are.
Winston-Salem
I
for
got some
Forsyth
words
County.
on you now.
Winston-Salem for Forsyth County Schools. Shout out.
Yeah,
There you go.
They used to put me in the class where you had to write the dictionary all day.
Well, I tell you what, dictionary.com aside, Dr. Cavill and I had a chance last week to talk to Ted Gumbart. He's the commissioner of the ASUN conference. And he had a lot of conversations, a lot of different kind of avenues when we talked about realignment in college athletics overall. Dr. Cavill, one of the things we talked about was associate membership. The MEAC seems to be a little stronger right now because everybody plays basketball than football. Do you see a way, if the Division II thing weren't to work, hypothetically, could associate membership be a factor in helping the MEAC out?
Yes, certainly. That would be my second line of defense that I would go to as associate membership to really open up the doors for what I refer to as historically white colleges and universities to join the conference and associate member platform. First, a plug in there, I think people should go check out that ASUN interview because he really gives some perspectives about how these associate components work. He talked about the partnership between the Big South, which is another component of associate that the MEAC may want to entertain. How do you partner with the other conference to make things move forward? So
let's take it your stuff.
Yep. Definitely you need to take advantage of all ammunition, as they say in your gun belt, tools in your tool belt, specifically to talk about how do you move this conference forward. So yes, associate member, meaning that they just play a couple of sports or maybe even one sport, such as football, to get that number up in such a way that you can continue with the conference overall for the benefit of moving forward, specifically as it looks for making sure that the MEAC SWAC Challenge and the Celebration Bowl continues and the pot of money associated with it.
Vaughn, you've been around forever, around the MEAC, man, around FAMU, between you and your dad. PWIs in the MEAC, even if they were just associate members, how do you think that would land as a possibility?
Well, a lot of times when you look at Courtney Gaucher, FAMU VP and Director of Athletics, his presentation about FAMU's move, he referenced a 2014 study that was done, which came to the exact same conclusion that the 2020 study did. I was there for that 2014 study, and the results of it just didn't sit well with administration, as would our fan base actually accept FAMU going to a conference that was not an HBCU conference. That's very important. FAMU annually, one of the attendance leaders in football. And so trying to, and during that time, between that 2014 time and 2020, FAMU had home and homes with Coastal Carolina, home and homes with Sanford, and also visited Troy University. And I have to say that the home attendance against Coastal Carolina and Sanford did not represent the rest of the season, even with HBCUs, even with MEAC schools. So you kind of get an indication there that it will be an uphill struggle. But over the last few years, the MEAC and Commissioner Thomas have done a great job with associate members. A few years ago, when the FAMU Board of Trustees said to save money, FAMU needed to drop golf, and the MEAC was in danger of losing the AQ, Dr. Thomas brought in Augusta College, which is a PWI, and they're still a member. Same thing happened with one of the schools dropped bowling. A couple of the northern schools dropped bowling, and they added in University of Alabama Birmingham, and another university. So the MEAC is well versed in adding associate members. And so I think that has to be on the table for Dr. Thomas and the consultants and Dr. Frederick, who is very knowledgeable. Let me just say that from the MEAC press conference, what I got was Dr. Frederick, as a university president, is well versed in athletics. Every school that is successful in athletics, the president has to understand athletics because he has to divert the resources to make it work. So I was very impressed with Dr. Frederick in that press conference, that he does understand the full cycle of athletics.
Well, Steve and Wale, you guys can talk about vibes when it comes to HBCU and PWIs, and Wally, maybe more recently you than anybody else. You've been to Coastal Carolina and FAMU. You've also been to, it wasn't a game, but you've seen Winston-Salem State's band play for Wake Forest fans. You've been in a couple different environments, Elon, A&T.
Duke Central.
Duke Central. How would you rank those experiences over the last couple of years?
They vary. A&T Elon did have a very good atmosphere. Elon came out. If you go watch the video, me and B-Dot talked to, a host. We had a whole crowd of Elon fans right there, and they were pretty much like, yeah, we ain't never been here, but we like it. Waving the flag, you know what I mean? They weren't really concerned with any of the extra stuff. It was a football game, but you have a city rivalry there. Burlington, Greensboro, they're close to each other. There's something connecting them more than just two schools who play football. Coastal Carolina FAMU, which is the game I re-met Vaughn at that game in 2016. I feel like that was one of the first games of the year, and Coastal Carolina, their whole campus was a party that particular day. So, it's hit or miss. I think if you can link them to some sort of other rivalry, like Elon, A&T, if you can link them by two cities that are close, you might be able to bring some stuff in. But one thing I thought was interesting, the ASUN commissioner came out with a video a while ago that me and Tolly watched, where he was kind of talking about making this super mega conference of, 20 plus schools, to which associate members would play all these other sports. So you might have 25 members of the conference and only 8 that play golf. Well, those 8 that play golf are your golf conference. You don't have to have schools playing this conference, that conference, or whatever. And my thought is, are they planning on maybe having some sort of micro HBCU conference within this mega conference that they're looking to build? If they get Hampton, A&T, Central, South Carolina State, Norfolk, whatever, some 6 HBCUs, we're looking at it now like, oh, they in the Big South and that's not this, that, and the third. But if the long game, if the 10, 20-year plan is let's have a mega conference, well, they could have a mini HBCU conference right in that mega conference. You know what I mean? That could be they could have a whole division that is an HBCU division within their football. So I think there's bigger games at play. I'd like to see it all play out. But I thought that was interesting that I think a lot of people don't know. You can find that video online if you look up ASUN commissioner. But there's bigger games at play than just what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, so, I think Dr. Cavill, he kind of told us when we talked to him that he didn't think that idea was going to work in his current state, but it didn't bother him at all because he was like, well, we got to back up to that and a back up to that and a back up to that. So he may have to take a different route, but I think they kind of still have they have their eyes on many prizes with HBCU schools definitely being of interest to what they're trying to accomplish. Is that safe to say from what you took from our conversation?
No doubt about it. He quickly made sure they understand that he's willing to try things, and so be it if they don't work. The opportunity to be innovative in that approach is kind of his gift to what he brings as a commissioner, that he looks at the various scenarios and doesn't really ask the question why it doesn't work. He said, ask the question, how can it work? Which I love that mindset. But back to what Vaughn and Wally are addressing in some degree, I do think that the culture environment is important. We hear talking about do it for the culture. But in similar, I coined this term what I call the HBCU sports culture. And what does that really mean? But I'm just saying that there is significance in regards to how you look at the HBCU sports culture and how it drives fans. So that's not something that you can just take out. And you're right, for different institutions, it may be bigger factor than other institutions, but I think it's something that we have to keep our eyes on as we continue to look forward at this conference journey.
Steve, if we see a scenario one day where these schools are, watch this word, integrated within a conference, that Twitter smoke that can be sharp but yet friendly at the same time, We might have to come up with a rule book for that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely it takes on different dynamics. I mean, like you're saying, the commissioner at the ASUN, he's very innovative and forward thinking, and a lot of times the folks, a lot of times, there's criticism that folks aren't necessarily that much, and we need more of that. How much will people buy into it? How much will it change or alter the brand of HBCU sports, specifically football, but just HBCU sports in general? I mean, the thing I love most going to the CIAA and the MEAC tournaments is, before the games at the tournament, you get lift every voice and sing. I mean, we just saw it on NASCAR the other day, so I'm not going to say in 2020 that anything is impossible going forward. But cultural things like that are things that people resonate with HBCU sports bigger than a lot of things, and it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, part of me has felt like, just doing this, that the conferences are great, but as far as on the East Coast and the Division I HBCUs, with them just being so spread out, a lot of times, you don't really get to intermingle that much. And it's, I think, what Dr. Cavill touched on and Wally touched on as far as, rivalry, which is really important, beyond the schools that are in your area is really hard to affect and to keep up. I mean, again, you can play, Morgan State and North Carolina Central, I keep coming back to them, they can play each other every year and it can be tight. And in a way that is a rivalry because they're both competitive. But do Morgan State and North Carolina Central alumni run together in the same circles at the same places? How much of that is just a matter of sports? And I think at HBCUs, it always has to be bigger than sports. So it'll be interesting to see. But, you could potentially see, the day one day where the SWAC champion, the MEAC champion, and the OVC champion and the Big South champion could be all HBCUs, and you could get 4 into the NCAA tournament. So I think that really this all just kind of parallels the book by Dr. Eugene Robinson. It's called Disintegration, and it's talking about how, pre-1968, all the black folks were kind of in the same bucket and everybody was pretty much the same. You stayed in the same neighborhoods. The doctors and the lawyers lived together. The doctors and the lawyers lived together with the common folks. And since then, we've seen a change. And honestly, it started with the MEAC in 1970 when those folks moved out of the CIAA neighborhood into the MEAC neighborhood. And now you're starting to see it where you've got A&T and Hampton have decided to move out of the HBCU neighborhood. They're still HBCUs. I mean, certain things you can't get rid of. But, it's very interesting to see how things will change and how the culture will adapt to it. The culture of HBCU football, we talked about that a lot. And there was a time a couple years ago before the Celebration Bowl that some coaches, especially at the FCS level, didn't even want to say Black college football. They wanted to make sure that they were, their FCS schools that happened to be HBCUs. And I think, things that have happened in the last couple of years have maybe changed that. Maybe the Celebration Bowl has changed that. So it'll be interesting to see how that'll be altered as well. But I think, we're on the brink of some really huge changes, already, especially once this time next year hits.
Well, there's going to be a lot of questions about the Celebration Bowl moving forward if the MEAC remains in its current state. Vaughn, does Rattler Nation want a piece of that FCS playoffs again? I remember it wasn't that long ago. You guys went up to Boone and beat App State and made some history there. Does FAMU want back in the playoffs?
Absolutely. The FAMU fan base absolutely loves the playoffs. People say it's a long time ago and it's distant history, but winning that first championship under Coach Hubbard, and then Coach Billy Joe going farther than anybody else has gone, both at FAMU being in that playoffs. FAMU had a taste of it and enjoyed it. But there's another factor that a lot of us are ignoring, and it's based on Hampton's exit. Hampton's exit left the rest of the schools in the MEAC that played football scrambling. because all of the games it was such a short notice that all of the games were basically canceled. So it left all of the schools in the MEAC scrambling to try to fill that spot. And then they became so enraged at Hampton. When Hampton came back around and they couldn't fill their schedule in the Big South, they tried to schedule MEAC schools, and the MEAC schools presidents had joined the pack and said, no, we're not playing them. So it left holes. With that being said, when that was done, the MEAC implemented a protection policy of itself, and because of the enrage from that, to be honest, we don't know exactly when Florida A&M or Bethune-Cookman will be able to play a full SWAC schedule, because the bylaw that they put in as a result of Hampton is a 4-year schedule. 4. Most of the times it's 1 or 2, but because of Hampton, it is 4 years. The MEAC could hold steady and really sabotage a lot of the initial energy from this SWAC deal by a deal that all of the schools actually signed.
That's a great wrinkle you bring in there in terms of understanding how that plays out. And as I said, the technical part. And so usually there's a general agreement once you make that move that you come out. But depending how they felt this relationship took place, and that's why in a lot of ways you see FAMU and Bethune-Cookman in terms of their entire body saying great things about the MEAC, because they want this exit strategy to be very smooth in terms of how it takes place. So they want to see the MEAC look good moving forward and survive, because they don't want them to include that clause as they try to kick off for the 2021 season. The other thing I like to add quickly is we tend to look at this in football, as you said about Celebration Bowl, and I'll let somebody else talk about how that may work. But basketball-wise, the MEAC, as well as the CIAA, if we look at those regions, have been doing much better than what we see in the SIAC and the SWAC for that matter. So some of this may be also sport-related in regards to how it looks. So we have to be careful to focus so much on one or two sports, but look at the whole conference in regards to how it looks at various sports, because what they're doing in Norfolk with the basketball tournament has been one of the upswings in terms of what the MEAC has been able to do from a positive perspective. So how do they look forward moving that around in terms of that component, if you will?
They're also losing 3 baseball teams, because Bethune-Cookman, FAMU, and North Carolina A&T are the schools that do play baseball. I think they had 8 starting this year, and now they've got 5. I think the automatic qualifier is 6. So the baseball will definitely be one that they'll look to. If they're going to add associate members, they're going to want to do that quickly so they can continue to keep their automatic qualifier.
And also with
all that
Bethune,
education.
Also with Bethune, FAMU, and North Carolina A&T, you probably have the last 20 years of MEAC baseball champions.
But they've got other teams, right? As they said. I'm sorry.
That's cold, Steve. That's cold.
Yeah, A&T's won all the championships.
Doc, you brought up an interesting point. I think moving forward, I would do a lot of lip service to my schools that are still left, because it's not only about trying to recruit some other people. You got to keep what you have. Like, you got to solidify that maybe even before you start worrying about who might be coming in. I'd be singing the praises of North Carolina Central basketball. I'd be singing the praises of Norfolk State basketball. Absolutely. Making sure that I show them the love and show other potential members, hey, you're going to get great competition, great teams to play. Because if you don't show the love, man, people.
That's why they creep. Keep it on the down low.
And to that point, as Wally was talking about this educational thing, let me throw this math out there for you real quick, is that as you talk about toting the praise of these teams, you got 8 and 6. So that's less money that you have to split that's coming in from the NCAA basketball side. So that's something that I would put out there, that actually, as a conference, I can provide you all with more money, even if we sit pat. So, let us do our due diligence to go get some teams and make sure, as we talked about earlier, it's a cultural fit. It makes sense in terms of regionality and travel. But at this point, what I was saying is actually, if you lead somewhere, you're going to a conference that is probably bigger, which means by definition, if you're getting essentially the same money from SES, your cut from that split from the conference is going to be less. So let me find a way to say, hey, we got this basketball money. Y'all sit tight. Next year, which is a reason why they may push FAMU and Bethune-Cookman out and say, hey, we can split this money between just 8 of us in basketball coming in versus trying to split it 10 ways.
You can leave, but it's going to cost you. I think that's the song.
Yeah, and explain. Just take a little more time to explain how much of the budget that is for a lot of these schools.
Yeah, so let's say, just make it quick and dirty. Usually you're getting about $1 million essentially payout, or at least last I seen from the SWAC. There's about $1 million in some form that comes from the NCAA per institution. But let's say just from a quick calculation to make this real easy, let's say the payout among the SWAC schools, let's do 10 of them at this moment, is $10 million. So if you divide that by 10, that's $1 million per institution payout, right? So if I bring somebody in and I'm the commissioner, I'm going to my presidents to get this vote and the ADs, right, SWAs, I got to convince them if I'm extending it to 11 teams, that somehow I'm able to increase my budget to 11 million. So when I split it 11 ways, that each team still gets $1 million, or obviously 12 teams is $12 million. So when I split it 12 ways, they get $1 million. And what you would really like to say is if I bring in Bethune-Cookman and FAMU, then I'm going to reduce the expenditures because of travel, and I'm going to be able to get more revenue and extend my revenue in such a way that my profits are actually bigger. Now I bring in $13 million because of everything we did. And so I'm actually going to extend you all more money than what we were when we were at 10. So that's what the MEAC has to find a way to sell right now is I'm splitting less money between the 8 than we did with 10, 11, 12 schools. So I'm going to put more money in your pocket and let me have the time in such a way that I can bring in a credible partner, even if it's, like you said, a 6-member to say baseball, that is 5 in such a way for the other sports full membership that we increase the revenue pot. The profit margin is really important, what we talk about. So when you divide it, I can put more money in your pocket, which is what Stephen Gaither alluded to, is what is going to catch the eye of anybody coming in, those Division II schools. I'm not even talking about what you revenue that you're coming in. I'm saying partner with us. We're going to show you the way. When I divide the profit, I'm going to give you more money than what the CIAA gives you in the MEAC, no matter what you're spending.
That's math, man. There's a lot of things you got to consider. I guess it's not so easy being athletic director as people make it seem to be on Twitter.
Wally, you need to join my class. You quiet. Hey, you need to sign me up for the online. That's what I'm talking about, folks out there. Just so y'all know, y'all hear me talking about the way stuff feels. They got calculations. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, I gotta give a round of applause for y'all. I knew coming in here, y'all was gonna drop the knowledge. So I love it.
Hey guys, in the moments that we have left here on the call, last week Morehouse announced that they were not going to play football. I've talked to some other schools who say they're going to make some choices after the 4th of July, so we'll see as the weeks continue to grow. Let's get a prediction from everybody before we go. We'll start as I see them on my screen. Dr. Cavill, your prediction about how much football we'll see in the fall.
At this point, with the COVID taking off, unfortunately, specifically in the South, I just don't see football taking place. Really, any fall sports.
Stephen J. Gaither, I see you next. How much sports in the fall?
Oh man, I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna say 4 games for the FCS. I'm gonna give them a little something, a little taste of something. They're gonna try to spark. They're gonna try to spark them out.
Wally, how much sports in the fall, man?
Honestly, I think you are going to get some institutions who are just going to put their foot in the dirt and say, we're going to play. Especially if you have 2 we going to play schools scheduled to play, they're going to play.
They might play 3 times.
You know what I mean? I just by the way it's looking to me with everybody being disjointed. I mean, you got Morehouse saying we're not playing while the other schools are playing. And you just got people It's just people are just doing. It's the Wild Wild West. So I honestly think you are gonna get some schools who are gonna play, and I'm gonna be there shooting them as well. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm gonna keep it real. As y'all know how I get down, I'm gonna be there. I'll have a mask on. But if they playing football, I'm gonna be there shooting it, no doubt. For y'all, I'll get the Rona for the culture.
Vaughn, you guys don't play down there in Florida. Y'all just do what you want to do. Last week it kind of got lost in the mix, but FAMU added the game. They're going to go to Jackson State to replace the Tennessee. I think they're both missing out on Tennessee State.
Southern.
That's right. FAMU missing out on Southern. Jackson missing out on Tennessee State. How much do you think we'll see this fall?
Man, my state, man. I when they say Florida on the national news, sometimes I just have. I mean, we've been bashed a lot in Florida just for general purpose, how we've handled things. I'm hoping some football and basketball will be played, but I think I'm pretty confident we will begin to learn the names of the cornhole champions and the dart champions that are playing right now.
Oh, God.
Esports will go on.
Yeah. Esports, and we'll have the United States Air Force Esports tournament in the SWAC, and me and Wally will play cornhole.
Well, over on Aspire, you're going to get nothing but documentary segments on the No Huddle. So y'all pop some popcorn. I'm ready either way it flies. But, yeah.
But I do want to say, speaking of that, if I can do a plug real quick.
Yeah.
A big part of FAMU and Bethune's move to the SWAC centers around the other sports. And coming up this week on HBCU Game Day, we got a special segment where I sat down with Florida A&M coach Jamie Shoup, the defending MEAC champion, and Alcorn State head baseball coach Brett Richardson. And it was very interesting to hear their take because the other sports are not considered as much. And even if you go beyond football, it's normally basketball. But I talked to the baseball coaches, and so we'll get a better perspective of the totality of the move to the SWAC.
Dr. Cavell, what do you have coming up on inside the HBCU Sports Lab, and where can people check that out?
Currently, we're scheduled to have the Tennessee State Athletic Director, the new one, Dr. Mickey Allen, as well as Charles McCullen, Dr. Charles McCullen, the SWAC commissioner, as you know, on the show tomorrow. So we might have a surprise for everybody.
Wait. You got Dr. McClellan and the Tennessee State AD on the show at the same time.
I didn't say at the same time. See, you're a smart man. But they will be on the show during the same time. Yeah, they'll be on the show during the same time. We'll see if we can get some conversation to go and see if we can entertain this question on why it was Bethune-Cookman over Tennessee State. I'm going to ask the question straight up, so y'all get it here first. So tune in tomorrow because the fireworks may take place. And so unless somebody backs out, we'll see what we can get. It should be entertaining. That's what we do. You can check it out every Tuesday from 6 to 7 Central Standard Time on Facebook Live. Go to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Okay, by the time people see this, it might have already aired. Will they be able to go back and see it after it airs? Great point. Still let them go and check it out because it will be on YouTube. So we will record it so you can come back and check out to see what the fireworks were. Hey, I'm going to be there with my popcorn. Man, you, if I hadn't asked, you wouldn't have even told us. Look at you, man. You just, man, I knew you were a highly trained professional. I knew you were going to ask.
A good Winston-Salem State University, Paul Patterson, thing coming off.
I cannot play spades with Dr. Cavell. We'll be arguing over books, man. I can't do it. Hey guys, it was a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Let us know what you think in the comments. A lot of opinions, thoughts, and suggestions are out there. This has been HBCU Conversations with the best guys I know. Waleed Pitt, Stephen J. Gaither, Dr. Kenyatta Cavell, and Vaughn Wilson. I'm Tali Carr. We'll talk to you guys later. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. You will not be disappointed.